What is going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Mike Roach Podcast, where I talk everything sports, politics, culture, and beyond. And as you can see, very special guest with me in the building, a man that I enjoy working with dearly, by the way, for a decade plus now at this point. Leo Rautins, former NBA pro and overseas stud, a Syracuse legend, former coach of the Canadian national team, and NBA analyst for TSN. Leo, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great, Michael. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure.
Appreciate it, man. And you have some great insight, not just about the NBA, but specifically the Toronto Raptors. So I want to jump right into this thing. Okay, Leah. So first of all, what do you make of this past season? Let's start there.
Well, it was definitely an interesting one, right? Pretty much from the beginning, we heard rebuild.
Mhm.
And, at times I thought everything's going good, competitive games, and you lose, right? That's kind of the idea. And then unfortunately, then you saw win streaks, and everybody was kind of excited about the win streaks, but I'm going, you don't really want to have all these win streaks. That's not what you're looking for. And then, as the season went along, and everybody kept saying, okay, end of the season, easy schedule. I go, no, 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 no. Now you're playing all the teams that want to lose, that are trying harder than you
Yeah.
to lose. So now it becomes a real difficult situation. So, if you're going to rebuild, you got to be all in.
Hmm.
I thought that kind of frayed a little bit. And then you also don't want to look like there how many games where you're playing, all of a sudden you're just sitting everybody, you throw guys out at the end.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good. The optics aren't great,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, in a testament to Darko and the work that the coaching staff has done, the young guys played well and they won those games, right? So
Yeah.
you end up putting yourself in a tough situation where, hey, you can still get lucky. The odds are slim at a number one, but you can still get lucky with a pick. You're not going to, hopefully, you kind of have that seventh spot. But at the same time, I thought that it could have been done a little bit better in
Yeah.
terms of losing. But like you just don't want to waste a rebuild. You don't want to go through this again.
Yeah.
And I think there's, we got to see a lot of bad teams, right? And of the bad teams, I thought the Raptors were the best team.
Sure.
So that's a good thing. I think that the climb is not as steep as it's going to be for some other teams.
It's funny when you talk about the losing, right? Because when I was all over social media, a lot of people gave you the most credit because you were the one who was actually verbalizing and keeping it real and being honest and telling people, listen, if you're gonna lose, at least do it properly. Okay, don't put in 6 game win streaks and 4 game win streaks in there while you're at it. You're either gonna win games or you're gonna lose games, but don't mix it up and make things worse for yourself, right? So I
Yeah, I
find
mean,
that
people
interesting.
people were celebrating, saying this is great. I go, no, no, this is not good. This is the exactly what you don't want to do.
Yeah,
Like I said at the beginning, when the Raptors have competitive games, comes down to the wire, you lose those games. Hey, fans see a good game. You're getting development because you're playing different guys, and you lose. That's like the perfect scenario. But it kind of got away from that down the stretch.
I just did a podcast talking about Trey Young and his comments because he's pretty pissed off about the whole play-in situation, and he thinks, if you make it first through 8, then you should automatically be in the play-in. But then at the same time, I was trying to tell people the reason they put it in the first place is because when you get that first to 8, those other 7 remaining teams, it's just like you mentioned. It's like everybody's on the bench, nobody's playing. The games are just a wash. It's terrible in every way, especially for the fans, for ratings, for a multitude of different reasons, right? So,
Yeah.
what do you make of tanking overall?
I don't like it. And it just doesn't look good. And I don't like the perennial tankers, right? I mean, you look at some of the teams that are there every year now. Charlotte, Washington. I mean, come on.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
Unfortunately, you can't do it. I love in Europe you have the relegation system, right?
Right.
Where if you drop, you could be out, and then
Hmm.
you got to fight your way back in. Obviously, with marking and the NBA cities and the requisite. For what kind of arenas, what kind of cities. You just can't dump teams. it's much more difficult to do. But at the same time, I don't think you should be rewarded. I don't think there should be a reward for
100%.
being a perennial loser. Um, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I also thought, hey, I don't know who, I just saw it today. I thought, hey, this is a pretty good idea. It might have been Danny Green said, all these bad teams should have to play to get a pick now, right? Now you got to play it and win to get a pick. I thought that wasn't a
Correct.
bad idea either. So
So
losing is just not going to be good enough, right?
I'm
It
glad you
doesn't
said
look good.
that. Right. I'm glad you said that because to me now is where you run into problems because you never want to incentivize winning, right? And so the solution that I thought would be the best solution was to flip the lottery odds. So I thought that the team that should get the highest odds to win the lottery is the best team to not make the playoffs, which means even if you're out of contention 1 through 8 to be in the playoffs, you still have to bust your ass to get the highest pick.
Yeah,
That to
or like I
me,
said, go have a playoff where you actually have to win, right? You want a good pick, you better win. And by the way, I want to, about Trey Young's comment that, hey, the play-in's kind of interesting because you give some people a chance, right? But then you
mhm,
have perennial play-ins. You have, Sacramento, Chicago, a perennial play-in. Is that what you want? And that's what I think the Raptors had to, you don't want to get any part of that.
right.
But if you're a runaway, you're way away from the pack and you're 7 and you got to play in a play-in, that would suck. That would really hurt. But
Absolutely.
when you look at a Trey Young's comment and then you watch him play in a play-in, it was embarrassing at times how he played and where he was defensively. And like I'm just here, and then you're gonna make a comment like that afterwards. Come on,
Mhm.
dude. If you're gonna lay it all out there and you're gonna be in a play-in, your job is to win and your job is to play. And watching him play, I thought was bad.
Yeah.
Really bad the way. And so when players like that make comments, um I don't think it looks good for them, and I don't think it looks good for the game because they're not representing what they're even saying.
Well, you're right. It was quite bad. It was pretty embarrassing to say the least. You're right about that for sure. Um, Brandon Ingram, does he make Toronto a playoff team?
I think Toronto's going to be a playoff team. Between the core that we saw, and even though they didn't have a whole lot of games, there was enough of a sample size for me to say that if they're healthy, if they're, and I think Darko's done a really good job of coaching this group. If they're healthy, the young guys continue to develop, and I made this point, Michael, that if you go back to the 2019 championship.
Mhm.
Everybody kept saying prior to that, oh, the Raptors they can't go get that free agent. They can't do this, they can't do that. Okay, so what's the solution? You develop, right? You got to draft well, you got to develop players, and hopefully you get lucky with some trades. And they did, man,
Yep.
Gasol, Kawhi, but you got to develop.
Yeah.
And they kind of got away from that a little bit. I thought this was a really good development year. And if those young players they got continue to develop with the core that they have, and then a Brandon Ingram, who I think gives you a big time score, if he's healthy, and remember, that was the same question when Kawhi came. Is he going to be healthy? And that's when you have Raptors, Alex McKechnie made sure that, Kawhi was able to play and able to, reach his peak with the Raptors. And I think you're going to see the same with Brandon Ingram. They were very careful when they got him. No sense in rushing him in and putting him in a rebuild, get healthy, show the commitment to him and his body. But he gives you a score because look at the Raptors situation. Their franchise guy is not a big scorer. I mean, Scotty Barnes is not a scorer. He can defend, he can pass, he can post up, he can do all kinds of
True.
things, but he's not a guy that's going to be out there giving you 20, 25 a game. That's not his thing. And he's not a good enough shooter yet to be your big time scorer, your go to guy. So you need a go to guy. Despite having a franchise guy, you need a go to guy. And I think that Brandon Ingram gives them that kind of a guy. He scores effortlessly. He's the dog on the offensive end. He can do all kinds of things. And if you look at that, I think RJ has shown that he can score in a lot of tough situations. Quickly can score, so you can compensate for Scotty Barnes in terms of what he's not giving you, because he's given you a lot in so many other areas. So I think this team, and again, the point I made earlier, there's a lot of bad teams.
Yeah.
And I think the Raptors were the best of the bad teams that I saw. And
Yeah.
that's that. If you look at this, let's just stay with the Eastern Conference. There's no great teams. There's some good teams. There's some really good teams, but there's no great teams. And so that climb to get up and into the playoffs and move up in the playoffs is not as steep as I think people perceive it to be. I think you can get there, and you could, again, who they draft, how they tweak, maybe trade, whatever they do between now and next season or during the season, can dictate a lot of their success.
So you mentioned Scotty Barnes and you mentioned the development. I'll get to the development in a second, but did you notice anything different about Scotty Barnes' game in particular this season?
Well, I thought he became more of a leader. I thought he became more vocal. I thought he became more consistent in terms of effort. The hard part about being a franchise guy, you got to be there every game, right? It's
Hmm.
hard. And when other guys aren't there, you got to be there. And it's hard. You got to grow into that role. I thought he did a better job this year. And defensively, he's got to be the guy that can lock anybody down. He's got to,
Mm.
you can put him on a point guard or a big, and he's got the ability to do that. Um, I didn't like down the stretch, and part of that is what they were playing in and who they're playing. Right? It's easy to get away from playing the right way or doing what you have to do when you're playing a lot of bad teams, and winning isn't necessarily the focal point, right? The shot
Mm.
selection, intensity on offense, making the right play. I think it's easy to get away from that, and I think he got away from that a little bit. But if Scotty continues to work on that shot, be consistent, make open shots. Okay, you got to make open shots. And then he's like his post game solid, right? He sees the floor as well as anybody. Like I said, we talked about the defense. He can push the ball. So he can bring a lot to this team as long as he continues to develop, and I think decision making with the ball when it comes to offense, in particular his own offense, not distributing, but his own offense. That's going to be an important thing for him to continue to develop.
So before you mentioned development, we talked about, Jamal Shed and Walter, and you have Mobo. Anything in particular you like about any one of their games specifically? I know that's a bit much. Three different guys I just threw at you, but Walter
I
and Shed's, you see those guys a bit more often. And they've played pretty well this season.
I tell you what, I got a lot of good things about all three of them. For me, Mobo is the one that, he's got length, right? He's got explosiveness, he's quickness, he plays hard. Every time he's out there, he plays hard. He tries to take the rim off every time he goes to the basket. I love his game. He showed me that he's working on his shot, his offense. Again, make open shots, be consistent, and that's going to come. But every other part of his game, there's a lot to like. He impressed me. I think Walter a little different. He battled some injuries and different and stuff during the course of the season, but I think I like his game. I like his game.
Mhm.
I think that he can do a lot of things. He's active, and then Shed's a tough little dude, man. I'll tell you
Oh
what.
yeah.
He's
Hmm.
he came from a great program. Sampson's a great coach. You could tell that he's well coached. He's disciplined and he's tough. Um, and the Raptors have had success, obviously, with small guards with Kyle Lowry and Fred Van Vliet. So that's not unusual for them. But he's a nice guy that can come into a game, give you a spark, give you that toughness. I mean, he's a guy you don't want to bring up the ball with him on you. You just don't want to do it. And the league has changed, right? You don't see guys taking a short guy down the post and abusing him down there. You rarely see
Hmm.
that anymore. So I think Shed showed a lot this season, but with the three of those guys, I think is very promising. I think that all three showed a lot in terms of what they can do going forward.
Do you have any concerns with the lack of depth from the center position after Jakob Poeltl?
That's always a concern. Yak is tremendous. How many times do we hear people saying, "Hey, you got to move him, you got to trade him for what? Like what? What are you going to get? Who are you going to get in this market that can do all the things he does and play with literally anybody you put on the floor with him.
Yeah.
So he's tremendous. Yeah, but I'd be looking for some more depth for sure. If he gets hurt, you can see the difference in the games he plays and he doesn't play. So it's dramatic. So if you can look for a little bit more depth there, and I don't know necessarily you want to do that through the draft or you want to do that through free agency. Because through the draft it's a little harder to get a big that can be a contributor. Immediately. But the good thing is with a player like Jakob Pertl that he's really going to help anybody he's playing with. Any big guy that in practice every day. He's going to help that player grow and understand the game a lot better, as well as the coaching staff. I think they'll do a great job with that, but definitely need some depth up front.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that actually, because I think we kind of, well, maybe not us, but I think there are some people, as fans who kind of overlook the value of Jakob Pertl just because his game is not necessarily quote unquote sexy, but what he does and what he provides for this team is invaluable at this point. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I got two more questions for you here, Leo.
All right.
Team identity. Team identity. Now, I talk about team identity a lot. Do all good teams need some type of identity?
Yeah, you gotta because you want to know that when you step on a floor, this is who you are, right? This is who you are, and I think the Raptors established a lot. Um, Even for like you listen to the comments other teams make, they play hard. Okay. If you can play hard every game, and it's hard, 82 games, but if you can play hard every game, you're gonna have some stinkers, right? Everybody does. It's a long season. But they consistently played hard. I thought they made great strides defensively. Some of the new guys, the young guys, actually contributed a lot in that area. I thought RJ showed that he can make strides defensively. Obviously Scotty and so forth. So you want to be a team that plays hard. You want to be a team that's going to get after you defensively. And I think that they really did a good job of moving and sharing the ball, right? And it's a lot harder to guard teams that can, anybody on the floor can score. Anybody on the floor
Mhm.
can get the ball and make a play. And you're making plays for each other. So if you want to lock in on this guy, no problem. That ball's going to keep popping. Boom, you're going to go. Yeah, you're still going to run plays, but there's a lot of freedom to read and react, right? And I think that the players started to really understand Darko's system. Don't hold the ball, move the basketball, and create for each other. And when you play that way, and it takes some discipline too, right? You have a certain amount of freedom like that, and again, kind of I referred to a little bit down the stretch of the season. You can see some of the shots guys are taking. You don't really want that, but I think a lot of that had to do with who they're playing and you're winding down. But for the most part, I thought they did a really good job of moving the ball. So if you're a team that everybody knows they're gonna compete. They're gonna compete. They're gonna get after you defensively, and they're gonna be really hard to stop because that ball is distributed. That's a pretty good identity, and I
Mhm.
think that for the most part. They kind of laid the groundwork for that, and you got to give Darko a lot of credit for when you have a season like this, it's easy to go sideways. It's easy for guys to not play hard. We didn't see that. We didn't see that. Like literally every game, these guys came to play. Whether they're playing a lot, a little, sitting, resting, coming back, we got effort. We saw that effort. So I think some really solid groundwork was laid.
Now, Leo, last question here. We know Cooper Flag declared for the NBA draft. Obviously, we know he's going number one. He's a flat out stud. We don't know where the Raptors are going to fall in this draft lottery, but is there any, not necessarily player, you can name one if you want, but not necessarily player, but is there any type of player that you would see you would like the Raptors to go after?
You always kind of look at that, and I think that generally, they really understand who they like. Their coaching staff, scouting people, they understand what kind of team they want to be. So I think and if you don't get obviously the exact player you want to get. I think at this point the best available, right? The best available. Um, And because you're still building your depth, you're still building, and there's different players. I mean, you can go. Do you want to go with that younger guy with size that may be the best available? I tell you, who's an intriguing player. Uh, and some people might shake their head, but you look at Knipple from
That's
Duke.
who I mentioned on one of the last podcasts. He's a phenomenal player.
That dude can play, and he reminded me. I put this on our broadcast when we were doing the NCAA's of a. And people don't take this literally, but Chris Mullen. When Chris Mullen came into the Big East, you're looking at a guy who just knew how to play, and he had that baby body, big, thick, not necessarily that quick, but look what he did in the league. Yeah, he's tough, and he knows how to play.
He has a handle, can shoot it. He's feisty.
Yeah, and what he lacks on quickness, he makes up with by understanding angles. So he'll get to the ball quicker than you. You may be more athletic, but he'll get there because he understands the game better. He understands angles better. So Knipple's a guy that intrigues me. Everybody was talking about all these other guys, and he was the guy you had to leave on the floor for Duke. He had to be on the floor. Yeah. So again, players like that, that I think could, surprise a lot of people with their NBA careers. So I think it's best available. Who's going to be best available when your pick comes?
All right, Leo Rautins, NBA analyst for TSN. Leo, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it, sir.
Michael, anytime for you, my friend.
Thank you, man. And give a big shout out to Sam for me, okay? That's my boy right there.
I will.
All right.
All right.
All right. Take it easy. Thank you, Leo. Appreciate you.
Good.